afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this meeting of the Russell Cotes Art Gallery and Museum Management Committee. As clerk to the committee, I'm going to preside over the first item, which is the election of chairman for the ensuing municipal year. Do I have any nominations from the floor, please? Councillor Williams.
I should know by now, shouldn't I? Can I nominate Stuart as chair?
Yeah, do I have a seconder for that?
I'm happy. Sorry, after you.
That's fine. Are there any further nominations? Lovely, then, so over to Stuart.
Thank you very much, everybody, and welcome to this meeting of the Russell Cotes Art Gallery and Museum Management Committee. The second item is the election of a vice chairman of the Russell Cotes Art Gallery. Nominations? Sorry, Andy.
Thanks, Stuart. I was going to nominate Lawrence if he was so minded to accept.
And I'm very pleased to second that from the chair. Are there any other nominations? In which case, thank you very much, Lawrence, and welcome to the post of vice chair of this committee. Yes, the seat is vacant. But item 3, our apologies for absence, and I'm very alert to the fact we have received a number.
We have, Chairman. Can I just go through some housekeeping before I do that?
Of course.
Is that okay? Lovely. So please note this meeting of the Russell Cotes Art Gallery and Museum Management Committee is being live streamed and will be recorded by the Council to support the production of the minutes for the use of democratic services. In order to ensure the meeting is managed effectively, please could everyone present follow these ground rules for speaking. Only speak when invited to by the Chairman, and please mute your microphone when you are not talking. For those in the room, please note that if the fire alarm sounds, please exit the building by way of the nearest available signed fire exit route and make your way to the assembly point along Bradley Road under the flyover. Finally, please ensure background noise is kept to a minimum, and can everyone ensure their mobile phones and other devices are turned off or switched to silent for the duration of the meeting. Thank you. And we've received apologies, Chair, from Ms. Fiona Windrow, Mr. Greg Irvine and Sir George Merrick.
Thank you very much indeed. Item 4 are declarations of interest, and councillors are requested to declare any interest on items included within the agenda. Are there any? Thank you very much. Item 5, which are the minutes of the meeting which took place on the 20th of March this year. Are there any points of accuracy related to those minutes? Thank you. Alan?
Yes, I'm fairly sure I was at the meeting, but I'm not recorded as being present.
A very important issue. If we can add Alan Frost to the numbers of attendees. Are there any other matters of accuracy? Okay. Then taking any matters arising not otherwise noted on our agenda. No. In which case, we're able to move to item 6, public issues, to receive any questions or statements which may have been delivered prior to the meeting.
I can confirm there are no public issues, Chairman.
Thank you very much, which then allows us to move to item 7, which is the update on the progress of the museum since our last meeting. And I'm going to ask you, Sarah, if you don't mind, to speak to the report which we have.
Thank you, Chair.
We have in our papers.
What I'll just do is just highlight the sort of most important aspects, and then obviously opportunity to take any questions. So I think first of all, it's just to say, you know, it's been an exceptionally good summer for the museum. The way that I tend to write the reports, for those who are new, is I write them in 6 months 6-month chunks according to the financial year. So just because the last meeting was slightly earlier than that, there's a little, like a 1 month which is not included in this report. That will be included in the full picture for the whole year will be included in the annual report to the charity commissioners, which will come up at the next meeting. So I've sort of excluded that kind of period. But just to say, the last financial year, we were back on track in terms of visitor numbers and income to pre-COVID levels, which is quite an achievement, given I think from the national survey, the average is an 18% reduction on visitor numbers. So it's quite an impressive achievement. And this summer, it has to be said, we have had an extremely good summer. So visitor numbers are up indeed 14%, I think, on the previous year, and are only the second. There's only one other year in 2015 when we've actually exceeded these kind of numbers. They were, and these are related, I think, specifically to the very good Lucy Kent Welsh exhibition, which I hope everyone went to, which was fantastic and brought in some significant national coverage. Also, we've improved our marketing. We sort of got a little bit better at understanding and using digital marketing, and that's really helped. And also, we have terrible weather, which is really good for museums. So we have had an exceptional summer with more than 30,000 visitors. So that's been extremely good. The downside, I think, is really that the building is in a very, very poor way, and we have very significant challenges because of the lack of investment in the maintenance of the building. I think the two areas, well, the one area of very great concern is the whole of the south-facing facade, which faces the sea, and we've got significant problems of water ingress, literally ceilings falling down and so on. So these are not good conditions for a grade 2 stylisted building with original decoration, and also extremely bad for staff who are working in those kind of facilities. So that is a challenge. So it's a constant challenge really of dealing with the kind of issues that we have. I have to report the lights. I've reported here the lights on the balcony have failed. I mean, because they're just end of life, you know, just the bulbs have gone. And today they were being replaced, which is a massive operation. If you can imagine building scaffolding in the main hall and up 3 stories, and someone climbs up and then changes the light bulb. And they are LED and so on, but unfortunately the lights are retrofitted, so they don't last very long. So I mean, they were put in maybe 5 years ago, and they should have a sort of 10-year lifespan, but in those kind of fittings they don't. So every few years, it's a major and quite risky undertaking. Anyway, it was going well when I left just half an hour ago. So moving on just briefly, then just say that, you know, Lucy Kent Welsh exhibition has been fantastic, and that has gone on to the National Horse Racing Museum in Newmarket, where it will be until the spring. And that we know brought in, and there are articles in the Spectator, it was the front page of Country Life, I think we were in the Times, and we know, I mean, I spoke to people who literally had come over, seen it on the front page of the Country Life, and had come over from America to specifically to see the exhibition. So we know really good exhibitions like that will bring in significant visitor numbers. At the other end of the spectrum, we were on Susan Kelman's, Trip to Seaside, or what it was called. Fantastic little piece on us. We couldn't have paid for better, and that has seriously brought in very significant numbers of people locally and you know, nationally, who were excited to see that. And I would say, yes, the cafe has been very successful. I suppose when the summer weather was particularly good, at least the cafe with our wonderful terrace was able to kind of bring in visitors, even if the people didn't necessarily want to come into the museum. So that was great, sort of kind of swings and roundabouts, the benefit of that. So they've seen their income increase by 20%. The one area that hasn't done so well is the shop, where merchandising and so on hasn't been quite so strong. Particularly the 2 months, May, June, which were very warm, we saw limited visitor numbers, and that really was reflected very strongly in the shop. And although it's recovered a bit, it hasn't completely recovered as other things have. Whether that's a sign of the cost of living crisis and people not wanting to spend money, on, on sort of things which are non-essentials, difficult to know. Still, our shop still does extremely well, but yes, that's the one area that hasn't seen quite such an influx. Study centre, we may come on to. Obviously, there have been concerns around a potential move of the study centre and then what that impact would mean for the service, which is extremely significant. So I've tried to write here, and it can be done, but it's a very, very serious and large, lengthy and expensive operation. So that has been, we've been considering that. And on the better news, we've got some good news on the funding. So we've been very kindly Bournemouth Civic Society have very kindly agreed to, or offered to donate their residual funds to us because they're closing very sadly. And we've also been offered a very significant bequest, a legacy from Julia Stallard. And I've just put in another application to the Arts Council for sort of £100,000 for an 18-month project, audience development project as well. We've yet to hear on that one. So it's been an extremely good summer in many ways, but also quite challenging.
Thank you very much, Sarah.
Yes, Sarah, I'm pleased to hear the lighting's being done indoors. I just wanted to note, I came to the opening, as you know, the other night, the exhibition, and I found it really, really scary, to put it mildly, to walk down the pathway with no lighting outside. My wife and I felt very vulnerable, and if somebody had jumped us, we wouldn't have seen them coming. So I just would make the point that it does need dealing with urgently.
I do endorse Councillor Williams' point, not only for the point of view of security, but really point of view of identification. The building sort of lurks behind the hedging, which I know is a security advantage, unless you're within the grounds where it's probably a disadvantage. And also the building, when you were speaking of the balcony, I had two things in mind, Sarah. The balcony within the building, but also the balustrade beyond the building within which there is external lighting. And I wasn't conscious of the external lighting fully functioning, which it's not.
Thank you for that. And in fact, it's come up recently with volunteers who've been attending, maybe helping, supporting on these late night evenings that we do, and they're very great concerns about leaving late in the evening. And I think there's probably both on the slope, where I think some of the lighting has gone on the slope. So we have called that into the council, and also internally in the garden, all the lighting has gone. That is literally has been repaired a bit and is being further improved. It's quite challenging because of the just the nature of this sort of external lighting. The flood lighting that was there, it doesn't function, hasn't functioned for years. So there is a real concern around. I think, and it doesn't have to be late, does it? It's 4 o'clock in the afternoon from in a few months, and it will be dark for staff, for visitors, and we have raised that with building services that should be looked at again because for safety. But thank you for raising that. It will help me.
Councillor Martin.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. A couple of things for Sarah, really. I imagine you might be picking up this, my first point, under item 8, but the visit that Lawrence mentioned by the Thai ambassador last week, are you mentioning that at all? Or?
I wasn't going to, so if you want to, yes, but happy to mention it.
Yeah, no, that'd be great, because I think it deserves sort of wider middle. And there were lots of people there, but I think it was a fantastic evening for all sorts of reasons. But I said that might be worth just picking up. The second thing is a really small point. You mentioned about the cafe. Do you have any sense of how many people come to the cafe because they come to the museum, or because they come to the cafe just because it's a great place to have a drink and have a look out? I just wondered if it's something that could be more widely promoted. I've said I don't have a cup of coffee with Matty, I think, recently, and it's a fantastic asset, isn't it? So I just wondered if you had any sense about that. And then the really just for my own benefit, the last point was obviously the situation with regard to, if you like, the fragility of the building. Can you give me a sort of an estimate, an update, of how much is needed to put put the building into a condition that you would like it to be in, not necessarily just the continuing patching it up.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sarah.
Thank you. Yes, lovely. Thank you for those. So the Thai, yes, the Thai site, the exhibition Siam through the lens of John Thompson opened about a week ago. And last Wednesday we had a private view, and the Thai ambassador and his wife and various someone from the Anglo-Thai Association, London, and also Narissa Chakraborty, who's an advisor on it, who's a member of the Thai royal family, came to that event, and it was a fantastic evening, wasn't it? And it was, thank you, and it was really well supported by councillors. The mayor, the chairman of the local BCP, and so on came, and it was very nice to have that kind of support. So it was a really nice evening. The exhibition, I think, will be. Well, it's tremendous, and I'm pretty sure it will be very popular. So that was that was a really good evening, and I'll probably cover that further in the next report. The cafe. So we do keep figures on people who, when you come through the door, the paywall is obviously into the museums beyond the cafe. So we do keep figures of people who are coming specifically to the cafe only, and also to the museum. Obviously, it's slightly porous because people can come in through the terrace. So we don't. It's quite hard to sometimes get those figures absolutely accurately. But we do know. So it's about. I have figures probably in here actually, but it's about 1,000 people a month would probably come into the cafe only, maybe not quite that, compared to say 4, 5, 6 for the museum, 5,000. Just recently with our new slightly better digital advertising, we've been looking at advertising the cafe separately, because I think, as you say, a lot of people aren't aware that you can just come to the cafe. You don't have to have bought a ticket to the museum. So I think we're doing a bit of promotion about the cafe specifically, and that I think is what has actually driven some of this benefit, this improved figures for the museum, for the cafe. So that is always something. The cafe just actually is back on its feet now, but that we lost, just completely randomly lost about 4 or 5 staff just recently. So it's just been a little bit. They've not been able to offer their full kind of service in the last month, but it's back to normal. We've recruited a lot more staff, so we do that. In terms of the building, actually, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I was asked to tell you how much is being spent on the museum building by Matty, by the service director, and so on. So at the moment, so the last year, say, the council, it's not in my sort of figures, it's not controlled by but isn't a budget that's controlled by the museum itself. They spend 9,600 on what we would call compliance. So that's kind of fire alarm testing, CCTV, lifts, legionnaires, pest control, that kind of thing. And then the only expenditure at the moment is what's called responsive. So there's no routine maintenance, it's only responsive maintenance. So last year, £22,000 was spent on responsive maintenance, and that would be everything from literally light bulbs to broken toilet seats to lock repairs, alarm problems, and it would all be things like that, just be in response to things that have gone wrong. Sorry, do you want to?
Alan Frost.
Thank you, Chair. It's interesting to note that the Russell Cotes is feeling the ripple effects of global warming. The rain in the summer clearly benefited takings very well, and it's interesting to see that the summer takings were up 30%. But the downside of the rain, as Councillor Martin has just mentioned, is the fabric of the building. And I believe that we've got something like a backlog of £4 million worth of repairs that we should be making. And those have been delayed for various reasons, but I think this is another reason why, in particular, externalisation, if and when we can achieve it, will be a real benefit. Because if we carry on with these wet summers the way we are at the moment, it's going to be disastrous. It's really heart-rending to walk around the museum and see buckets everywhere with water dripping in. And the sooner we can effect all those repairs, I think the better.
Certainly, the points that we see under page 11, item 7 of Sarah Newman's report you know, are really quite serious. This is a very fragile building, and to see the impact of water ingress at the level I observed it, you know, is distressing because some of it is going to take a great deal of resource to redeem. You know, a lack of maintenance means not only more maintenance, but major structural intervention at some point. And, you know, I think we're facing that in the very near future. Point I think I would make, having some experience of managing a rather larger institution, but one involving a number of staff, is currently the staff there are employees of BCP. And when I look at some of the circumstances in which they work, I think there is a significant abrogation of a duty of care. We've had rat infestation, we've had water infestation or ingress within working spaces. This is really unsatisfactory and should bring to account really not just maintenance, but actually making safe and appropriate workspaces for our staff. Sarah.
Yes, can I yes repeat? And I think just recently we had a situation where the door, the external door, was rotten in its frame and literally fell out. It could have really, I mean, it was a door that could have, it's a fire and security door, so it's an extremely heavy door, and that was a door that was important for security for staff and for the collection, and we had to report that to the Arts Council because it was protecting a GIS indemnified exhibition, so the Arts Council had to be informed of that, and it really is, it was both, it was, yeah, anyway, I just can't, I can't tell you how embarrassing and really not good it is. So as you were saying, I asked about the amount of work. We had a survey done in 2020 which identified £4 million of remedial work that just needs to be done to just bring it back to normal. Some of that has been done. Obviously, the Mend Fund, which we'll come on to in a minute, has tackled some of that. But equally, in the meantime, obviously, no work has been done, so the situation's got worse, and also inflation is such that, in a sense, I think it still is £4 million just to get back to where we would like to be. In answer to your question, and I would also say that the English Heritage Guide to looking after grade listed buildings is called A Stitch in Time. It's about doing things as soon as possible, otherwise the results are catastrophic and far more expensive. We're going to see that in a minute with the conservatory, which has been left for 10 years, and obviously now the costs are far higher than they would have been 10 years ago. So so yes.
Councillor Northover.
I just wondered if I could be helped to understand say if it was this building and a window was broken, it would be, I assume, fixed fairly quickly as part of, we've got staff here, this is a room being used. Is the Russell Cotes different to that normal maintenance that would happen? And if not, what's the reason for that?
Well, I think the answer is yes, it is different. Sarah is able, I think, to lend detail to this, but in my experience is that repairs are begged rather than administered, and therein is the problem. The facility somehow is at arm's length from the authority, although as trustees it rests within the authority. So there's a contradiction in terms, and that contradiction, I fear, has persisted for very many years, and it's one of the drivers for the proposals which are before the council currently, which is to make it an independent charity, able to administer in the way that those who have responsibility for not only local but national assets, because that's what we have a responsibility for.
just wanted to really add to that. I think when I was portfolio holder back in 15, 16, 17, I managed to persuade the director in charge at the time to spend nearly £1 million on the roof, which proved to be totally inadequate. But we got the majority of the roof done, and it was at that point I think the conservatory got further abandoned because we just ran out of money, and that's the problem the council has. It is a bit of a, it sucks the money out of the budget quite quickly and very easily.
Councillor Martin?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Obviously, I'm aware. Obviously, I'm relatively new to obviously the committee and the board, and also to the portfolio. I am obviously aware of the condition of the building, and Sarah and I have had a couple of chats about it. What I wasn't quite, I must admit, I'm slightly shocked by what appears to be a lack of care, lack of duty of care, and possibly legal responsibilities of under health and safety regulations by the council. I'm assuming, and forgive me if this is a fairly basic question, but I'm assuming that all these things that constitute health and safety breaches of health and safety regulations, and therefore legally are wrong. These have been drawn to the attention of the council. So things like doors falling off, the rats, etc., etc. I'm sure that you can give dozens of examples of where that lack of care or duty of care is not being met by the council for its employees. Is the council fully aware of all these breaches that they may be in breach of?
Sarah, perhaps you'd like to answer that.
Yeah, well, I think, I mean, things like with the door, we obviously report that through health and safety
Yeah.
and so on. I think with the problem with the particularly the water ingress at the front is it's a major problem, and it's not easily sorted because it's a historic grade 2 star listed building, and so it just gets shunted down the, oh yes, we'll, and then months and months, well, years in this case, go by, and nothing kind of happens. So that's the trouble. I think is it's very hard to get real action because it's not easily sorted, and in many ways, I mean, with the front. I was talking to the surveyor last week, and begging, as you say, please can we sort this out, because really I'm worried about people's health. I myself had to leave my office so they could take floorboards up to get rid of the issues under the rats and so on under the floors. So the and I did, I don't think the expertise was within the council. So it's this problem is there with no money, they haven't got the expertise within the council to deal with, which is quite a complex problem. So it just gets shunted down the line, and nothing happens, and it's very hard to make anything. From where I'm sitting, it's very hard to get anything to happen. I don't think anyone is here from who above me in the hierarchy that can make things move. So that's where we get stuck.
If I just come back on that, obviously there is a clear difference between things that need sorting because they need sorting to protect the building, and there are things that need sorting because they put the health and safety of staff at risk.
Yeah.
And it's that I'm just wanting to focus on right now, because clearly that is quite a shocking, as I think, as you said, Stuart, or somebody said, Lisa said, if there was something, if that issue would not be allowed to persist in this building, and you look at the amount of money that's been spent on the building and the main town hall, I just find it astonishing that there are people coming to work for BCP whose health and safety is being put at risk, presumably on a daily basis.
Yeah.
So I do wonder how we can progress that.
Well,
I can progress that clearly, and as can Lawrence, but I wonder if there's another mechanism as well that we can push this forward.
Well, I welcome any advice on that. Certainly, my own experience of having responsibility for 500-600 members of staff, I see inadequacy over the way in which the staff at the Russell Cotes are being, where responsible employer relations with regard to health and safety are being exercised.
Perhaps we can take this out of the meeting and
Yes.
have a chat about the way forward. to the top.
Alan Frost.
Thank you, Chair. Can I change the subject very briefly? And I'm not planning to go through all the items on the risk register, but I think it would be pertinent to hear from Sarah some reassurance about issues that have been raised in the press. The issues of leakage. We've all heard about the British Museum losing pieces of equipment and various artifacts. Has Sarah got a plan in place to sort of control this within Russell Cotes? Not just, of course, at the actual museum, but the study centre where there are so many artifacts as well.
Sorry, it's on. Anyway. Yes, thank you, Anne. So yes, obviously we read with interest what was going on at the British Museum. So the Russell Cotes is in a fortunate position compared to the position at the BM, in that everything has got everything in the collection is inventoried. So we have, you know, something which would say we know what we've got. So in the case of other museums, many museums, they don't actually, they've got lots of things which they have got no record of. So you can't, you say then you don't know whether it's stolen or not stolen or was lost or been put somewhere. So we're not in that, we're fortunate in that position. It's not what the gold standard is what's called the spectrum standard, where everything would be photographed and measured, and then you could say, you know, something goes missing, and you could say, right, here's a photograph and it's this size. We're not in that position. You know, that's huge amounts of work for, you know, in our collection, which is 40,000 objects. So obviously we looked at the at what happened, and we looked at our processes and policies and procedures, and we do audits. So we do regular audits. So we're audited regularly by the auditors themselves, who will usually ask for a proof of life for a number of artifacts, which are completely independent. We'd find those. We do the curator would regularly do audits himself on where things are and so on. What we haven't done is perhaps independent audits. So as a consequence of this, what happened recently, we've decided we've put in, I think I've put in for two audits a year, I think, where we would get a member of staff, not a curator, to be part of that kind of team, so they could go in. But obviously, if you've got 40,000 objects, how many do you audit and so on? So that was always part of our plan, but looking at what's happened elsewhere, we will, I know we've been very busy because of exhibition changeover, but now that's finished, we were going to look back at our policy. So I think there are areas where our policy isn't absolutely adequate. So in our plan, we have that we will do audits. That's always been something that we've done, but I think actually we need a better policy on it. So that's what I think I mentioned in here. I will go away and draw up a better policy to address those kind of issues that have come to light. So it's around audits and how often and who and so on, and then it's also about reporting loss and damage to you as the board. So if something goes missing, to make sure that it is part of our policy, that we would then report that to you and that you would then know about it. At the moment, that isn't clear in our policy. That is what we would do. So I think that needs to be upgraded. So we will use this as an opportunity to look back. So perhaps the next meeting, I will come back to you with maybe just like a codicil to our policy to show that we've improved our practice. Yeah, that was one of the things I was going to make a mention, but it's already gone. Sorry.
Very reassuring. Thank you.
Are there any other matters members wish to raise with Sarah with regard to her report? In which case, let us progress, and thank you, Sarah, for that. And we do note some of the matters that you've raised with us. If we now can move to the acquisitions, loans and disposals report. There have been no public issues. You confirmed that at the outset. So acquisitions, loans and disposals.
And thank you. Just for the benefit of our new councillors on the board. So this is a sort of standing item. So the museum acquires, loans and disposes items from its collection. This is governed by what's called our collection strategy, which lays out what we collect, why we collect it, and what we don't collect. As like all museums, we have a very large collection, and we don't want to be acquiring more things that we are never going to be using, and so on. In fact, we're trying to rationalise. So we're governed by our acquisitions, loans and disposals policy, our sort of collection strategy, which is available on the website. I think the link is there. So we're not acquiring very much. We acquire things which are very, very pertinent to the Russell Cotes, rather than sort of obviously more broadly, and we don't actively go and well, we look out for some things occasionally, to fill very specific gaps. So there are a few things that have come through, just a lovely, some couple of photographs and a print that's a print that's linked to the request that we got. I think it's interesting to see how much we loan. You might be interested to see how much of how important our collection is, both nationally and internationally, that we loan around the world. And it's just fascinating to see that the Kunsthalle München, the Venus Verticordia went to, brought she was seen by 350,000 visitors, and these really are ambassadors for the Russell Cotes. People will quite, I mean, I've met people who will have said, who say to me, oh yes, I saw Venus in Tokyo and I've come from Japan to the Russell Cotes specifically to see it. So these are our ambassadors for us, and obviously they've gone off around the so that just gives you an indication of the places that, you know, where they've been for which exhibitions and how many people have come. And then actually tomorrow I'm off to the British Museum. In fact, we've lent a Buddha shrine to their Burma exhibition, which opens, well, private use tomorrow. So that just gives you an indication of what's coming up. Normally I would bring some lovely treasures from Russell Cotes that we want to dispose of, wheelbarrows and all sorts of things we've had, haven't we? And ship models, but we haven't got, I'm afraid we haven't got any this time, but I'm sure Duncan will be hard at work for the next one to dispose of unwanted collections in items in the collection.
Thank you, Sarah. I've just, you know, one of our very treasured items, the Venus Verticordia, returned. Well, the exhibition in Munich concluded in July, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Have we got it back?
Yep, she's back. She's on the wall. She's looking very good after a German holiday. And I suppose, yes, it's an interesting one, isn't it? It was just to say for again for new people, you know, it's a balance, isn't it, for us? So people turn up to the Russell Cotes because they want to see Venus, and then they arrive because she's in Germany. So you balance that against her going to Germany and bringing in people. So it's always an interesting one, yes. But she is safely back on the wall in the meantime.
I know that there is a little element of controversy because we had a UK national exhibition of Rossetti, and they were after this painting, but it went to Germany. Comment?
Well, we had already committed it to go to Munich before the Tate got in touch with us to ask for us to lend it to them. So we didn't feel that we could turn them down. So sorry about that. Yes, there's a shame. But anyway, that's it. We just felt that we'd made that kind of commitment.
Well, I raised that partly in jest, but of course, Tate has quite a lot of Rossetti, so they didn't have the best one, but they had a lot otherwise. But I think it's really interesting looking at the international presence which the museum gains, but through these loans. And I have raised with this committee on previous occasions, but you know, for the benefit of Lisa and yourself, Andy, some years ago I was in Tokyo, and on the Tokyo subway was an enormous poster, of course, of Venus, and that was because it had been loaned to the National Gallery in Tokyo. So I was completely taken aback, and I note, although quite happy to be contradicted, it's probably the biggest publicity of Bournemouth that it has ever known in Tokyo. Okay, well, thank you very much for that report. And it allows us really to move to item 9, which is an update on the repair and renewal project, which has been funded by the Arts Council England MEND project for restoration purposes, and in our case, environmental plant and conservatory, although to avoid confusion, it is not biological plants in the conservatory. It's handling M&E, as it's called in the trade. Thank you. Although I just stopped because I apologise to our clerk because I should have been reading to you formally that the two reports are noted. There were no actions, but they are noted. Thank you once again, Sarah.
Okay, thank you. So again, just for background, this we were very successful in getting a grant. I think it was £518,000 from Arts Council for the MEND project, and then it was supplemented by funding from SIL potential borrowing and some fundraising that we've done ourselves. So 4 elements to this. Replacement of the environmental plants, as you say, this is M&E. So phase 1 has now been completed, which was the replacement of all the plants in air handling units. Sorry, 1 and 2. This is my life. And so, which is the units for the buildings. What we've done is we've phased it in order that we can stay open pretty well for the whole time. I mean, obviously the engineers would love us just to close the museum and then just do it much more quickly, but we've phased it, so it's been quite challenging. But anyway, phase 1 is now complete, and we have got all that plant has been replaced and is all functioning. Phase 2 is literally, I mean, it's just going on at the moment. As I left, they said we were all on schedule, and that's for the plant in the galleries, the 4 galleries at the end. And then phase 3 will be replacing the plant in the modern wing. And that will necessitate closing the museum down for 4 weeks, because the work will take place in the attic space in the modern wing, and it wouldn't be safe to be underneath, given it's quite fragile floorboards and you're moving very large bits of plant. So that's all going, that's all been commissioned or committed and so on, and that's all going ahead. Then the other element, one of the major elements is the restoration of the conservatory. And we've been working with specialist surveyors and architects to develop the designs. That went out to tender in the summer, and the tenders have come in, and they have come in much higher than anticipated. Probably the reasons we said earlier, 3 more years, and it's even more of an issue than it was, and obviously all building costs have just increased massively in that time as well. There's 2 other bits of work which are very small. I mean, tens of thousands, if that. Drainage work. We have a problem where quite often we have foul water coming up through the drains outside the front door, which is not the best look for visitors. So we've been doing some work on that. But actually, it turns out a lot of the problem is to do with the party drains which go through the Royal Bath Hotel. And because they're party drains, actually, the Wessex Water is responsible for those. So that essentially we think they've managed to sort them essentially for free, with a little bit of work, a little bit of work that's been done. So that's largely sorted. And there was a little bit of extra CCTV work. We were going to add in some CCTV on the roof to prevent lead theft, which is often an issue, has been an issue, and seems to be an issue for us. However, because these tenders have come in for the restoration of the conservatory greater than anticipated, I'm asking you for your support for us to kind of slightly rework the budget, so that we would not invest in CCTV. We can do that separately another time. The drainage work, as far as we can see, is pretty well sorted, and again we can pick that up another time. So we would use that funding along with all the contingency to devote to the conservatory. It's still not enough, so we would bring in £15,000 essentially from a historic insurance claim. So 4 years ago, pre-COVID, bits of the glass came off the conservatory and there was an insurance claim done, but the work has never been done. So this goes back to why does nothing happen? The money was there, it could have been done, it wasn't done. So there's £15,000 sitting in insurance that can just be added into the cost and added in. We've been fundraising alongside this all the way through, and so we have an additional £3,000 that we've raised from our fundraising. And then I have some restricted reserves, which are restricted for maintenance, which could be devoted to this. So I'm asking for your permission to bring in an extra £41,000 to allow us to deliver the conservatory refurbishment, which obviously is absolutely critical. Because as Councillor Williams was saying, I think it was 10 years ago they wanted to do this and they didn't have the money then. It's been waiting for 10 years.
Thank you very much, Sarah. As I understand it, we have had a substantial grant from Arts Council England under the MEN project to actually undertake the work. But as you've pointed out earlier, the costs of executing that have risen, for which reason we're seeking additional sums. Well, I'm asking you, but actually I need to ask the authority whether the sums you've identified, the historic insurance claim, the existing public fundraising and the restricted reserves are in a control account of the Russell Cotes Museum and Gallery. I raise this because it has been brought to my notice that the bequest, which you referred to earlier, of £80,000, has in fact been paid, although I believe an instruction has been given that that fund cannot be touched because of the current financial position of the authority. Now, I think this is really a very serious issue for our trustees, which is money that is specifically awarded to the Russell Cotes, and in many cases from external sources, is in fact it's to use. And it should have the discretion for its use. I think Councillor Martin, you
Yes, I was
poised.
I was slightly poised. Forgive me sitting back here. I run out of battery, not me, the laptop, so that's why I've just moved pretty briefly. We've talked about this last week, I think, about this £80,000, and I must admit, I couldn't get my head around why, what is the hold up on this, and I was just wondering, before I stick my oar in on this one formally here, have you had any response from the chief exec or the head of finance about why this money is blocked from coming to the Russell Cotes?
I haven't personally, but I understand that one of the reasons is that any expenditure by the Russell Cotes there's a moratorium across the authority, as I understand it, of expenditure other than reactive or emergency expenditure. But if an expenditure is made which then incurs further expenditure that may well come from the authority itself, then that is the anxiety. I don't think, I mean, if I had left money to the author, I would immediately speak with my solicitor. Well, you couldn't, could you? Because you'd be dead. But there is a prima facie legal case that a bequest is a bequest. It isn't a bequest to be left at the discretion of the authority, which is not the person or authority to which the money was left.
I was going to make the same point, that I think if this is being blocked for a financial reason, then I would think that BCP is on very legally dodgy ground, and I don't know whether the committee wishes me to take this up formally with the chief executive and the head of finance, but I certainly will do, and perhaps legal as well.
Thank you very much, and I sense that we will be very supportive of that. With regard to the specific request which you've made, are there views about the environment of the 41,000, which is in what we understand are allocated Russell Cotes account to be made to support the execution of the renovation and reclaiming, because it's not actually available for public access, is it currently? Bring
Well,
your own umbrella.
if it stops raining.
Yeah.
Is it that this money would make no difference whatsoever? It's just moving money around within the account.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes. Alan Frost.
Can I just clarify, the money from the Civic Society, Sarah, is that in the same position? 38,000, wasn't it?
Yes, yes. I mean, it hasn't arrived yet, to be fair, but yes, yes. I mean, there's a block on me using it until.
I suspect it won't arrive once they understand the situation.
Yeah.
If I may, that would be a disaster. And I think if Councillor Martin can look into the situation with haste and make it clear that Civic Society would probably withdraw, then that issue wouldn't exist.
I'll certainly take that on board and include that in my.
Thank you.
I think I think the head of finance is actually poised for a contribution.
Oh no, Stuart, I'm certainly not the head of finance, but I think sorry. Generally, when bequeaths and that are received, they have to make sure that before they're spent, there's no ongoing legacy, which the council might be committed to. So in that case, the money will be received. It will be held in an earmarked reserve, which is clearly identifiable, allocated to the Russell Cotes Museum. And then, as time moves forward, then, once it's drawn down, you'll be able to clearly allocate the funds from that bequeath. But at the minute, that's one of the reasons. Any bequeath that the council receive, they have to ensure that there are no ongoing legacies that might commit to the council to expenditure that they can't actually afford.
Councillor Martin.
So this sounds like it's more of a delay issue rather than a block. So
yes,
I think I'll seek clarification from Mr. Richins and Mr. Farron about timescales, etc. So rather than go steaming in, I shall go in and ask about how quickly they can release the money rather than why is it being blocked. I think that might be the better approach.
Yeah.
I mean, there has been a few email trails around that, which Matty's been party to, so he might have the answer directly for you that can clarify that. But I mean, for the Russell Cotes, there's there's two reserves. There's the earmarked reserve that covers the conservatory fund, etc., and then the council, within its general reserves, holds a balance of currently £283,000, which is clearly identified for specific projects.
I mean, I'm very reassured by that, but the point is the authorization of actual work.
Yeah.
That seems to be the problem. The money is believed to exist, but the use to which that may be put seems to be a rather problematic process.
Well, we can. I'll let Councillor Martin take that with Adam on that one, and Matty.
Yeah, thank you. On matters of finance, I think you'll be aware of this because I mentioned it on Friday when we met. There's a cabinet meeting with officers about the latest financial situation. I don't wish to be not in the room so that nobody tampers with my cultural budgets when I'm not there. So I'm going to give it 15-20 minutes, and if, with your permission, I shall leave and go to the other meeting.
Of course, and please, please, you go with our very best with you.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Sarah, I think you were going to just add something then.
Yes, I just did want to add something because on that subject, I suppose the situation in the council at the moment is that we're not there's no spend on anything unless it's statutory or it generates income. So actually, all the benefit of all the improved performance this summer is essentially irrelevant to the Russell Cotes. So all that it does actually is reduces the council's contribution, because I cannot spend any of it on anything like maintenance or conservation or interpretation or anything like that. And again, if you're giving your gift aid to the Russell Cotes, thinking it's going to the charity, I think it's quite questionable, really, whether the legality on that. So I think it really is. This is quite perilous. I think the sort of situation that we're in. So I think highly dubious. It's unethical. It probably is, just about legal. Maybe the way that the council agrees just to pay off any debt at the end of the year. But it's very, it's not a very motivating or encouraging situation for the museum.
Thank you very much, Sarah. I think we identify, as we always do in this meeting, the real challenges that apply to a non-incorporated charity, which is the difficulty to not only understand its financial position, but its difficulty in acting in the interests of the charity, one of which is to maintain that resource. And we really do most urgently need to resolve this. Thank you very much indeed. It now we are able. Sorry,
I'm not aware that we voted on your
Oh,
proposal.
Thank you very much, Lawrence. The proposal is that the sum of 41,000 be added or becomes an addition to the sums already available for the conservation and restoration of the conservatory. Are those in favour? Agreed. Then gone. Thank you. We now move to the item which was distributed a little later, which is an update on progress towards the Russell Cotes becoming a fully independent trust. This is a detailed report and records not only the history of this development, but progress with it. Contrary to some belief, this is not something which has merely popped up over the last 12 months. It's something really that has been an issue for the last 5 years, and indeed really for the last decade, which is the problem of a non-incorporated charity in which the trustees are not by their choice, but structurally conflicted in their joint roles as both trustees and elected members of the authority. This is not a unique problem to the Russell Cotes, but we understand is a model which was adopted for by a number of local authorities who were administering inherited or developed public resources. Many of them, indeed the vast majority, have moved those charities to an independent charity status. And we know that even within the locale, there are examples of that within Dorset and particularly in Hampshire, where this process was undertaken some years ago. The case for an independent charity has been widely acknowledged and supported. And I'm very pleased to report that it was once again reiterated by the leader and chief executive in a meeting which Alan Frost and I attended some month or so ago, and reinforced in a meeting with the chief executive on Friday. So the case for independence and its alignment with current custom and practice with the Charity Commission is secure. But that cannot be achieved without the amendment on item 73 of the 1985 Local Authority Act, within which the Russell Cotes is included. And we know that we need, through the Charity Commission and then the DCMS, to lay an order in Parliament. Now, the route for that has been very carefully set out and has the support of both of those key agencies. And indeed, the Heritage Lottery Fund, in the belief of the wisdom of the proposal and the immediacy of it, has supported us with the best part of £100,000 to cover all the legal costs that would be incurred in making that move. So all of that is very good. However, it would be inappropriate for this management committee, but more especially the trustees, to pass the trust into an independent status without the support of a financial plan, because for reasons we've already touched on, the charity currently has its asset on that transfer probably is naught. You cannot take on responsibilities for the conservation, the building, and particularly the staff on the basis of that naught. So a financial arrangement has to be agreed, and we have made some progress in that regard. And I felt that the meeting with the chief executive on Friday was helpful, in as much as there seemed to be a shared urgency at looking at ways and means. And your departure very shortly, Councillor Martin, may be critical to, some of those ways and means. But what I think is really very important is to understand also what the time scale is in this matter and the critical path which has been laid. We are alert to the fact that laying a parliamentary order is probably a 6-month minimum period, and most likely a 12-month minimum period. And if an election is called in 2024, we know that if an order isn't laid in the early part of 2024, it could be a hostage to the proroguing of Parliament. And the deferment of the order into whatever Parliament follows, which itself would be another delay of, well, it's rather difficult to judge that, but it could be a year, it could be longer. So urgency is very much an issue here. So there are 3 things, one of which has universal acclaim. An independent charity will be the most appropriate vehicle for the Russell Cotes. 2, a financial settlement must be agreed in order for that proposal to be viable in terms not only of its incoming trustees, but for the charity commissioners and DCMS. 3, time is of the essence. And it's those 3 things that have got to be connected, because they're not connected. We did have a very supportive council in March of this year, and the resolution is noted in this report. But actually, it has been very frustrating to see the progress of that towards the outcomes that I've identified and attempted to summarise. With all that said, let me conclude by saying that this isn't a zero-sum game. The independent charity has enormous benefits for every one of the interested parties. If it is not achieved, it doesn't mean that responsibilities disappear. The responsibility reverts to BCP, who, for reasons all of us can understand, will have immense difficulty with it. This is a way of preserving it, which is why, I wish to, place the case as vigorously as I have about seeking to resolve these, connecting up the 3 matters I referred to. With that said, are there any questions that you wish to raise in addition, Sarah, with the report that is tabled? Or are there any questions that other members of the committee wish to put, or points which they wish to make?
If I can just add, obviously I felt we had a reasonably good meeting on Friday, and I think the chief executive clearly understands the urgency of the situation. From memory, just want to clarify, did we say, or did you say that this needs to be, this financial agreement needs to be in place by the 1st of January? Is that what you
Yes.
said? Yeah.
I did crave that this matter needs to be resolved within the authority
Yes,
this
exactly.
calendar year.
Yeah. And I think we also agreed that we would, wasn't entirely sure I got the right response on that one, but that we should meet every 2 weeks to push this forward.
Yeah.
So I think hopefully with that sense of urgency and with those meetings, I mean, obviously time is running out, but again, the meeting this afternoon is another sort of way station on getting this budget finalised. And in fact, we have a budget consultation with all councillors on Friday, and then going out to public consultation fairly shortly afterwards. So things are happening. It may not necessarily seem as though it's happening, but it will all come tumbling out fairly shortly. So hopefully we can progress. Well, we've got it, haven't we? It's not hopefully at all. We've got to get this sorted out in the next 2 months.
Yes.
And a deal on the table and what have you. So, but I think you're going back to Graham anyway with some numbers, aren't you? I guess.
Well, there's a clarification of some of the numbers.
Yeah.
I mean, the difficulty is how the capital problems, which go back many years and which have been quantified around 4 million, are expressed. The ongoing revenue support is clear because it's within the current bid, whether it remains within BCP or outside it. There is a need for that. And then, of course, the issue which Alan Frost raised, which relates to the study centre. So there are a number of connected issues, but the first thing is getting a financial agreement, which in turn recognises, inherited deficiencies in the building, the position of the study centre either immediately or in some future, and the formal position of the transfer of employees from their current employer to the independent charity.
And on that note, I'll go to the budget meeting now, I think. Thank you.
Alan.
Yeah, just to clarify, just as Andy walks out the door, the recommendation in this note is that there is a financial settlement agreed by the 1st of January. That senior officer time is dedicated to supporting the agreement of a financial settlement. I think that's the point about regular meetings.
Yes.
And there's also the point about the stakeholders, which shouldn't be forgotten. People will want to know what progress we are making. Your summary, Chairman, was excellent. I think the only thing I'd like to add is that part of the problem we seem to have is that because the council, the authorities always seem to pay up money, it regards the Russell Cotes as a liability. I believe it's an asset, and if it could be seen as an asset, it will be easier to make the decisions, but we're not there yet.
Thank you. As ever, in far fewer words, you express the whole point. It is an asset. Are there any other matters with regard to the update report, which is published and to which I've endeavoured to make some summary? There is a number of risks which are identified, which I think are worthy of note by the authority, because I think failure in this regard would have a very, very high reputational damage for projects in the future. We're dealing with national agencies here, not people around the corner. Good.
I can just reiterate what you just said. As a recently retired member of the Arts Council, I can tell you that the Arts Council will support councils that support the arts. And I think we've got to remember that that mantra is very true.
with that said, we do have a date for the next meeting, which is the 11th of January next year, which will be a very important report. Well, I've got the date of the next meeting as the 11th of January. That's the 11th. Good. I think I'm now in a position to declare the meeting closed.
Do you need to just get the vote on that?
Oh, sorry. Yes, rather important. Thank you. I'm just returning to the recommendation. It's recommended that the management committee reviews and agrees to pause further work on drainage and seating. Oh no, I'm not. I'm bringing the next one. I beg your pardon. Can you,
Yeah, I think it's this is
oh, I mean,
second.
right. It's recommended that the management committee supports the continuation of the project to replace BCP Council as the sole trustee with a new corporate trustee as agreed by the council at their meeting on the 10th of January 2023, with a target date of the 1st of April 2025. And there are 3 requests. First of which is to make sure that every effort is applied to getting a financial settlement for the corporate trust. The second is that senior officer time is devoted to this outcome, and that further that senior officers communicate their commitment to deliver the project within the time frame announced. Are we agreed? We are all agreed, NEMCOM. Thank you. Now I am in a position to close this meeting. Thank you all very much, and thank you, Caroline, for your